Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The wind howled through the ruins of Harrenhal, moaning through its broken towers like a dying beast. No place in the Seven Kingdoms held so many ghosts, or so many whispers. They said you could hear the cries of Harren the Black still echoing in the stone, burned and melted by dragon fire long ago. But on this night, it was not Harren's ghost that stirred. Bryn Carver rode along the empty shores of the God's Eye, his cloak soaked through with rain, and his horse trembling beneath him. He was young for a sellsword, barely 20, and had the lean, restless look of a man who'd spent more time with a blade than a bed. He had fought for House Bracken once, then for House Blackwood, and when the war ended, he found himself adrift. Now he sought coin and purpose wherever either could be found. Rumor had brought him here, to the haunted shell of Harrenhal. Villagers in the nearby hamlets spoke of strange lights at night, and of folk vanishing from the roads. The blacksmith's daughter had gone missing 3 days past. Then a knight, Sir Davin, who went searching for her, never returned. The local lord offered silver to anyone who would ride there and find answers. None had yet come back. Bryn had seen worse, he told himself. Bandits, wolves, the undead in the north, though he'd never gone that far. Ghost stories were for children. Still, as he crossed the shattered causeway and the castle loomed above him, its towers twisted and weeping with rain, he felt a coldness settle in his bones that had little to do with the weather. The great gate of Harrenhal yawned open, unguarded. His horse balked, stamping its hooves and rolling its eyes white. Bryn patted its neck. "Steady, girl. Just a ruin, that's all." His voice was swallowed by the dark. Inside, the courtyard was a black sea of puddles. Bits of armor and old bones littered the stones. The smell was of damp ash and something else, something faint and metallic, like blood long dried. Bryn tied his horse beneath an overhang and drew his sword. He found tracks almost at once, small ones, barefoot, a woman or a girl by the size. They led toward one of the lesser towers, the Widow's Tower, half collapsed and leaning as though it might fall at any moment. He followed carefully, his boots splashing in the shallow pools. Lightning cracked above, painting the ruin in white fire. Something moved in the doorway. "Who's there?" Bryn called out. No answer. He stepped forward, his sword raised. The sound of breathing came from within. He entered. The tower's interior was narrow, filled with rubble and old casks. A faint glimmer of light flickered deeper inside. Torchlight, he thought, but too small, too steady. He crept closer and saw a girl kneeling in the dust, her hands bound with rope. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "Please," she whispered, "don't make a sound." Before Bryn could answer, the stone floor beneath him groaned. He froze. Then, from below, came a hollow scraping sound, metal on stone, rhythmic and slow. The girl's face twisted in terror. "It's coming," she hissed. "Run!" The floor gave way. Bryn plunged through darkness, striking stone and mud before crashing into a shallow pool. His sword clattered away. Pain lanced through his side. He lay still for a heartbeat, gasping. Above, the hole gaped open, rain pouring through. The girl's voice was gone. When he pushed himself upright, he saw where he'd fallen, a buried hall beneath the ruin, the air thick with decay. Rows of statues lined the walls, knights, kings, and women in ancient garb. all half buried in dirt and roots. Between them lay coffins of blackened oak. Bryn retrieved his sword and held it out before him. "7 save me," he muttered. Then one of the coffins moved. It was a slow sound at first, a faint crack of shifting wood. Then another. Then, with a wet, tearing noise, the lid slid aside, and something pale rose from within. A hand, then a face, gray, lifeless, and slick with soil. Bryn staggered back, heart hammering. The thing pulled itself upright, its eyes like milky glass, its mouth opening in a soundless moan. The air turned bitter cold. "Stay back," Bryn warned, though his voice shook. The creature took a step toward him, dragging its limbs like a puppet on frayed strings. Then, from deeper in the crypt, came others, shapes moving in the dark. 12, perhaps more. The dead of Harrenhal had woken. Bryn ran. He darted between the statues, slipping on the slick stone, their fingers clawing the air behind him. He found a stairway half collapsed, climbed it 3 steps at a time, and burst into another corridor, this one dry with torches burning faintly in iron brackets. Someone had been here recently. He heard footsteps ahead. A man in a dark cloak turned, a lantern in his hand. His face was gaunt, his eyes sharp. "You shouldn't have come here," the man said quietly. "Who are you?" Bryn demanded. The man's smile was thin as a blade. "The last keeper of Harrenhal's secret. But I think, Sellsword, that secret has just unearthed itself." Behind them, the moans of the dead echoed closer. And far above, in the rain and ruin, the girl began to scream. The screams above faded into the storm as Bryn pressed himself against the cold wall, every nerve burning with fear. The cloaked man turned his lantern down the passage, and its pale glow revealed carvings in the stone, sigils half scraped away, words etched in the old tongue, and faces worn smooth by time. "Move," the man said, his voice low but commanding. "If you want to live, follow me." Bryn hesitated. He had no reason to trust this stranger, but the sounds from the crypt, the scraping, the dragging feet, left little choice. He followed. The corridor twisted downward, spiraling into darkness. The air grew warmer, close with the stink of mold and rot. The man's lantern wavered, throwing long shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls. After a time, Bryn found his voice. "What are those things?" he asked. "The dead," said the man, as if speaking of rain. "Or what's left of them. They've been buried here since Harren the Black's fall. Fire took their flesh, but not their hate. They moved," Bryn said. "They walked." "Aye," the man replied. "And you woke them. I fell through the floor. I didn't wake anything. You set foot where the living have no right. That's enough." The man stopped before a heavy door banded with iron. Strange runes gleamed faintly in its surface. This place was sealed by maesters and sorcerers alike. Harren's bloodline wanted no one to find what he hid beneath his halls. Bryn frowned. "And what was that?" The man's lips tightened. "Power." He pressed his palm to the door, murmuring words Bryn could not catch. The runes flickered, then dimmed. The door creaked open to reveal a small chamber, lined with dusty books and broken relics. In the center stood a stone table, upon which rested a chest bound in black iron. The man crossed to it. "My name is Maester Loren," he said, "once of Old Town, before they cast me out from my studies." "What kind of studies?" Bryn asked warily. "The kind that keep us alive tonight." The moans in the corridor were louder now, echoing like wind through hollow pipes. Loren threw back the chest's lid. Inside lay a sword unlike any Bryn had ever seen, its blade dark as shadow, its edge lined with runes that shimmered faintly red. "This was forged for Harren himself," Loren said. Steel folded with something older than Valyria. They said it could drink the souls of men. Bryn stared at the weapon. You mean to fight them with that? I mean to seal them again, said the Maester. But it needs blood to wake, not mine. Before Bryn could speak, the dead were upon them. The first staggered through the doorway, a knight's corpse in rusted mail, his skull half collapsed, one eye socket crawling with worms. Behind him came others, their limbs jerking, their faces frozen in grim parodies of life. Lauren thrust the black sword into Bryn's hands. Now, sellsword, bleed for it. Bryn slashed instinctively, cutting his palm on the blade's edge. Blood welled, dark and thick. The runes flared to life, and the sword thrummed in his grip like a living thing. A cry split the air, not from Bryn, but from the corpses. They shrank back, their movements faltering. Lauren chanted in a tongue Bryn did not know. The runes on the walls began to glow once more. For a heartbeat, it seemed the dead might retreat. Then one lurched forward and struck the maester full in the chest. Lauren fell, blood soaking his robes. "Finish it!" he gasped, pointing to the circle of runes at his feet. "Strike the heartstone." Bryn turned. At the chamber's center, a red gem pulsed in the floor, the source of the light. The dead closed in. He raised the black sword and brought it down with all his strength. The stone shattered. A blinding flash filled the room. For a moment, Bryn saw faces, countless faces, rising from the earth and crying out as they were drawn into the blade. The ground shook. The dead collapsed, lifeless once more. Then came silence. When the light faded, Bryn was on his knees, the sword still humming faintly in his hands. The air was heavy with dust. Lauren lay motionless beside him. He rose unsteadily. The wound on his palm had stopped bleeding, but the skin around it had turned black, as if burned. The sword no longer felt cold. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. He looked down at the Maester. "You said you wanted to seal them," he murmured. "Looks like you did." But as he turned to leave, he heard a faint whisper. It came not from Lauren, but from the sword. "Do not leave me." He froze. The voice was soft, feminine, and full of sorrow. He lifted the weapon slightly, and for an instant the reflection in the blade showed not his own face, but that of a young woman, her eyes wide with fear. The girl from the tower. Then she was gone. Bryn staggered back, heart pounding. He sheathed the sword, if such a thing could be sheathed, and climbed the stair. When he emerged into the ruin above, dawn was breaking. The rain had ceased. Steam rose from the shattered stones where the crypt lay beneath. He found the girl's tracks in the mud, but no sign of her body. Only a single ribbon, torn and stained with ash. He should have ridden away then. He should have taken his horse and never looked back. But the memory of that voice, the plea in it, would not let him rest. He glanced once more at the ruin behind him, then mounted his horse and turned toward the nearest village. Someone there might know who the girl was, or what bound her spirit to this cursed place. As he rode, the sword at his side whispered again, so faintly he might have imagined it. "You freed me, but not all are buried yet." And somewhere deep beneath Harrenhal, the earth trembled once more. The village of God's Eye lay quiet beneath a sky of pale gold, the morning mist curling over thatched roofs and broken fences. Smoke rose from the chimneys, but no sound of laughter or trade reached Bryn's ears. Even the dogs were silent. He rode slowly through the empty lane, his horse's hooves muffled by wet earth. Every door was barred, every window shuttered. It was as if the people had hidden from the dawn itself. Only one place showed life, the inn at the crossroads, its sign creaking in the wind. Bryn dismounted, tied his horse, and entered. The smell of smoke and ale filled the dim room. Behind the counter stood an old man, bald as an egg and half-blind, polishing a cup that was already clean. He looked up sharply when Bryn entered. "You shouldn't be out by the lake," the innkeeper said. "Folk that go near Harrenhal don't come back." "I noticed," Bryn said. He set a silver stag on the counter. "I came back, and I've questions." The man hesitated, then took the coin. Questions cost more than ale. Bryn tossed another coin. "There was a girl, brown hair, young. She was taken near the road 3 nights past. You know her?" The innkeeper's face tightened. "Lisa Tarot. Her father's the miller. Poor man's near mad with grief. He says she was taken by ghosts, by the cursed dead of Harrenhal." "She wasn't taken by ghosts," Bryn said. "She was alive when I found her." The man's eyes widened. "You found her?" Bryn nodded slowly. "She was bound. Someone left her there. Then, something woke below the keep. The dead rose. I fought them off, but the girl vanished." The innkeeper crossed himself with trembling fingers. "The gods protect you, boy. You shouldn't have gone there. I need to know who would bind a girl and leave her in that ruin." The old man swallowed. "There's been talk. A band of sellswords, calling themselves the Iron Hands. They came through 2 weeks ago, took what they pleased. When folk stood up to them, they took the girl instead." "Where did they go?" "East," said the man, "toward the Trident. But if you're wise, you'll ride the other way." Bryn turned to leave. "Boy," the innkeeper called softly, "if you truly went down there, did you see it? Did you see Harren's curse?" Bryn paused. "Aye," he said quietly. "And I think it followed me." Outside, the morning had turned gray again. He mounted his horse and set out toward the east. The sword at his side was wrapped in cloth, but even through the layers he could feel its pulse, faint but steady, like a heartbeat buried beneath stone. For 2 days he followed the road, through woods and past burned farms. On the 3rd day he found them. The Iron Hands had made camp by the riverbank, a ragged lot of 20 men and 2 women, their armor mismatched, their banners black with rust. Bryn counted the numbers from the trees. He saw no sign of the girl. He waited until nightfall. When the campfire burned low, he moved. The first guard never saw him coming. One swift strike, and the man dropped without a sound. Bryn crept closer, the black sword whispering at his side. He did not mean to draw it, yet as he neared the heart of the camp, the whispers grew louder. They took her blood. He froze. The voice was clear now, unmistakably hers. The girl's. They took her blood, Bryn. They took it for the stone. His hand trembled. He drew the sword. Its edge glimmered faintly red, as if remembering the fire of the crypt. A rustle came from behind him. He turned just in time to see a shadow rise. Then a blow struck his shoulder, and he fell hard into the dirt. "Got you," a voice growled. Rough hands dragged him to the firelight. A tall man with a scarred jaw and a cruel smile stood over him. "What's this, then? Another hero come to play savior?" Bryn spat blood. "Where's the girl?" The man laughed. "You mean our little witch? She's long gone." "Gone where?" "To the lake," said another voice, a woman's, lean and hard-eyed. "The maester paid for her blood, said it would wake the stone beneath Harrenhal." Bryn stared. "Maester Lauren?" "The same," said the scarred man. "We thought he was dead, but he sent word after we left, promised gold if we fetched him more. The girl bled well, so he wanted another. We've one waiting now, if you'd care to join her." Rage burned through Bryn's chest. He lunged forward, breaking the grip of the man who held him. and the sword was in his hand before he thought to draw it. The air rippled with its power. He swung once, twice, and the camp erupted into chaos. The iron hands shouted, scrambling for weapons. Firelight danced on steel. Bryn moved like a storm, the sword's voice guiding him. Each stroke cut deeper than mortal steel should. Each man that fell left the blade brighter, hungrier. When the last of them dropped, the camp was silent save for the river's murmur. Bryn stood panting, the sword glowing darkly in his grasp. His reflection in its surface seemed older, colder. He turned, and there she was. Lisa stood at the edge of the firelight, pale as moonlight, her eyes empty. "You freed me," she said softly, "but you freed him too." "Who?" Bryn asked. Before she could answer, her form flickered like mist, and she was gone. The wind carried a faint laugh, deep, cruel, echoing from somewhere far below the earth. Bryn looked toward the west, where Harrenhal's black silhouette clawed at the horizon. The sword pulsed once more, and in its whispering heart he heard the truth. The dead Meister had not sealed the curse. He had only changed its master. And the thing that now stirred beneath the castle's melted stones bore his blood on its tongue. The road to Harrenhal wound through the mists of the riverlands like a scar, half swallowed by reeds and silence. Bryn rode it alone. His horse limped beneath him, weary from 3 days' travel and 2 nights without rest. He had not slept since the camp by the Trident, not since the girl's ghost had spoken. The sword lay across his lap, shrouded in torn cloth. It whispered still, not words this time, but sighs, soft, shivering sounds that came and went with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Sometimes, when the clouds broke and moonlight fell on the blade, he could see her face there again, Lisa, pale and weeping, her lips moving soundlessly as though trying to warn him. He tried not to look. By dusk, the black towers of Harrenhal rose before him, jagged and melted, their tops like broken teeth against the sky. The air grew colder as he approached, thick with the stink of ash and lake water. At the causeway, he reined in his horse. The last time he had crossed these stones, he had entered hell itself. Now the silence seemed deeper, expectant, like the pause before a scream. He dismounted and led his horse across. No wind stirred, no raven called. It was as if the very air were holding its breath. Within the courtyard, the puddles had frozen over. The melted towers glistened with frost. Bryn saw prints in the mud, many of them heavy and fresh. Someone, or something, had come here before him. He loosened his sword, though the motion brought no comfort. The gates of the Widow's Tower were gone, torn from their hinges. Inside, torchlight flickered faintly. He crept closer and peered within. The sight made his blood run cold. The floor of the hall was ringed with bodies, men in maester's robes, their throats slit, their blood pooled in the grooves of a vast symbol carved into the stone. At its center stood Maester Loren. He lived. His robes were blackened by soot, his skin pale as bone, but his eyes burned with a light no living man should bear. "Bryn Carver," he said softly, his voice echoing through the hall. "I wondered when you would return." Bryn stepped forward, blade half drawn. "You died." "I was remade," said Loren. "The stone below demanded blood, and I gave it mine, and hers." He smiled, thin and terrible. "Did she speak to you, the girl? She always did have a soft tongue." "What did you do to her?" Bryn growled. "I bound her," Loren said. "Her spirit keeps the gate sealed, but when you shattered the Heartstone, you broke her chains. You freed the key, but the door remained, and now it opens for me." The ground trembled. From beneath the floor came a deep, pulsing sound, like a heartbeat heard through stone. The torches flared blue. Loren lifted his hands and the air shimmered. "You cannot fight it," he said. "This is Harrenhal's true heart. Every soul that burned here, every curse and cry, they gather below, waiting for flesh." Bryn drew his sword fully. Its dark light filled the hall, meeting Loren's pale fire with a sullen glow. "Then I'll end it the way I should have before." Loren laughed, a dry, broken sound. "End it? You carry the key, fool. That sword drinks death. Every life you've taken fed it. Do you not feel it growing inside you?" Bryn's hand shook. The black veins that marked his palm had spread up his arm, throbbing faintly. He could feel the blade's hunger, could feel it whispering promises, strength, power, vengeance. He gritted his teeth and charged. The clash was swift and terrible. Loren moved with inhuman speed, his staff glowing with blue flame. Bryn's sword struck it aside, the impact shattering sparks across the floor. The old master staggered, but he did not fall. His mouth twisted in a snarl. "You cannot kill what is already dead," he shouted. "Then I'll bury you again." They fought through the ruined hall, among the corpses of Loren's followers. Every strike of Bryn's sword made the earth quake, the runes beneath their feet glowing brighter with each blow. The stone's pulse quickened, fast, faster, until the whole tower seemed to throb with it. At last, Bryn's blade struck home, driving through Loren's chest. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the maester smiled. Too late. The floor split open. A wave of darkness rose from below, thick, formless, filled with faces, the souls of the dead, countless and screaming. They swirled around Loren, tearing his body apart, then pouring into the air, into the walls, into the stone itself. Bryn staggered back, shielding his eyes. The sword pulsed wildly, drinking the darkness, but it was too much. The light flared, then dimmed. He fell to one knee. When he looked up again, the Maester was gone. In his place stood a figure of smoke and ash, tall as a giant, its eyes burning with cold fire. The voice that came from it was many voices at once, men, women, children, all speaking through the same mouth. "We are the forgotten. We are the flame denied. We are the fire beneath the stone." The creature stepped forward. The floor hissed beneath its feet. Bryn lifted his sword. "Then come for me." It did. Their clash shattered the silence of Harrenhal. The tower walls shook. Stone cracked. The force of it hurled Bryn back, but he rose again and struck, again and again, his blade blazing with black fire. Each stroke tore fragments from the creature's form, but each time it reformed, drawing strength from the ruin itself. "You cannot kill what has no name," it hissed. "You carry us in your veins." Bryn's arm burned. The veins had reached his shoulder now, the darkness spreading with every heartbeat. He screamed, driving the sword deep into the creature's chest. For a moment, the world went white. Then all fell silent. The shape dissolved. The tremors ceased. Harrenhal's walls groaned once, then stilled. Bryn stood alone. His sword lay before him, cold and dark once more. He knelt beside it, his breath ragged. The black veins in his arm faded slowly, leaving only scars. He reached for the weapon and froze. From its reflection, a pair of eyes stared back. Not Loren's, not the creature's, his own, but darker, older. Then the eyes blinked. He stumbled back, the blade slipping from his hands. It struck the floor, and the runes beneath it flickered to life once more, faint but steady. "We are not gone," the voice whispered. "You are our vessel now." Outside, the first light of dawn touched the lake. Bryn left the sword where it lay and stumbled into the courtyard. The air smelled of frost and smoke. Behind him, the widow's tower stood silent, though from its depths came a faint hum, like breathing, deep and slow. He mounted his horse and turned away, never looking back. But as he rode east, toward the rising sun, his shadow stretched long behind him, too long for one man alone. For 7 days and 7 nights, Bryn rode east, leaving Harrenhal behind him like a half-forgotten dream. Yet no distance was far enough. The wind carried whispers when he slept. The sword's hum echoed in his bones. He could still feel it, buried beneath the ruin, pulsing faintly, as if part of him had been left behind. He passed through lands still scarred by war, villages half-burned, fields gone to seed, the carcasses of forgotten battles strewn like memories across the plain. The riverlands had never healed. The soil itself seemed weary of blood. In every hamlet, men spoke of ghosts, graves unearthed, livestock vanished, shadows moving by night. The curse has spread, an old septon told him one evening as they shared a fire. Ever since that storm over Harrenhal, the air smells wrong. Folks say the dead walk again. Bryn said nothing. He merely stared into the flames until they blurred, and the faces of those he had slain seemed to flicker there. Lauren, the sellswords, the girl. Their eyes glowed faintly red, like embers refusing to die. By the time he reached Riverrun's outskirts, rain had begun again, heavy and cold. The castle rose ahead, proud but weathered, its banners drooping in the storm. The Tullys had returned since the war's end, but rumor said their hold was thin, their coffers empty. At the gatehouse, 2 guards crossed their spears. "State your business." "I seek an audience with Lord Edmure," Bryn said. "News from the west." The guards exchanged a wary glance. "And who are you?" "Bryn Carver," he replied. "Once of Blackwood Vale, I carry warning of Harrenhal." That name earned him entrance. Before the hour was out, he stood in Riverrun's hall before Edmure Tully himself, a man older, wearier than the songs remembered. His once red hair was streaked with gray, his smile dulled by loss. "What warning?" Edmure asked, voice heavy with disinterest. "I have enough curses of my own." Bryn told him everything. The dead in the crypts, the maester's betrayal, the darkness that rose beneath the castle. Edmure listened in silence, his brow furrowing deeper with each word. When Bryn finished, the Lord sat back in his chair. "You expect me to believe this?" "I don't care what you believe," Bryn said. "I only care that you prepare. The curse isn't contained. It's spreading through the rivers. Men vanish, crops fail. The land itself feels sick. Harrenhal's corruption is bleeding into the realm." Edmure sighed. "We've heard tales before. There's always talk of Harrenhal's ghosts, but no proof." "Then send me," Bryn interrupted. "Give me men. I'll find proof." The hall fell quiet. Rain drummed on the roof like restless fingers. At last, Edmure spoke. "You'll have no men from me, Sellsword, but you may find help at the Twins. Walder Frye's sons still bicker among themselves for what scraps remain. One of them, Sir Damon, has a taste for witchcraft. If there's truth in what you say, he may know it." Bryn inclined his head. "Then I'll ride north." Edmure waved him off. "And may the gods forgive me for listening to ghost tales." Outside, the rain had turned to mist again. Bryn lingered in the courtyard, staring at the swollen river below. The water was black, thick with silt. For a moment he thought he saw faces there, pale shapes drifting beneath the surface. Then they were gone. He turned his horse and rode. 2 days brought him to the Twins, those looming towers that guarded the Green Fork. The bridges below them creaked and groaned, their planks rotting from years of neglect. Frey men stood watch, their armor unpolished, their eyes hollow. Bryn crossed without challenge. Inside the hall, Sir Daemon Frey awaited him, thin, pale, and smiling too much. He wore black velvet despite the summer heat, and his fingers glittered with rings. "So," Daemon said when Bryn had finished his tale, "you've seen the dead rise, and a cursed sword that drinks souls." Bryn met his gaze evenly. "I've seen worse." "I believe you," Daemon said, to Bryn's surprise. "My masters whisper of strange happenings by the lake. They say the fish float belly up, the trees rot overnight, and the air hums like a plucked string." "You've gone there?" Daemon's smile thinned. "Once, I took a party of 50. Only 9 returned. And none will speak of what they saw." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Sellsword, did the blade whisper to you?" Bryn stiffened. "Ah," Daemon said softly. "So it did. I thought as much. Heron's gift always chooses its bearer." "What do you mean?" Daemon rose and went to a chest by the fire. From it, he drew a parchment, yellowed, brittle. The ink faded almost to nothing. He spread it across the table. "A record," he said, "copied from an older one, found in the citadel before it burned. It speaks of the Heart of Ashes, a sword forged not for battle, but for binding. It was meant to hold the spirits that perished in Dragonfire when Heron's castle fell. But the smith who forged it died before the work was done. The weapon remains hungry." Bryn stared at the words, though he could not read them. "It isn't bound to Harrenhal," he said slowly. "It's bound to me." Daemon nodded. "And to every soul it ever touched. The more you feed it, the stronger it becomes, and the weaker the walls between life and death. Then it must be destroyed." The Frey laughed softly. "If it could be destroyed, it would have been. No fire burns it, no hammer breaks it. You may bury it, but the blade will find its way back to the hand that awakened it." Bryn's stomach turned cold. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Find the forge that birthed it," Daemon said. "There, perhaps, lies its end. The place is lost to time, but the oldest songs name it the Black Anvil of Valen. Seek that, and you may yet silence the whispers." "And where is it?" Daemon's smile returned, slow and cruel. "Beyond the neck, in the haunted swamps of the Crannogmen. Few who enter return. But if anyone can, perhaps it's the man already half a ghost." Bryn said nothing. He turned to leave, but Daemon called after him. "If you find it, Sellsword, remember, power never dies. It only changes masters." That night, Bryn rode north beneath a blood-red moon. The wind smelled of smoke and wet earth. Behind him, the twins disappeared into mist, but the Frey's words lingered like poison. The sword pulsed faintly beneath his cloak. "We are not enemies," it whispered. "We are the same." Bryn gripped the hilt, teeth clenched. "No," he hissed. "I'm still alive." The sword laughed, softly, almost kindly. For now. The swamps of the neck stretched endless and gray beneath a sky of low clouds, their waters black as ink and alive with whispers. Bryn rode through the shallows, his horse half sinking with every step, the air thick with rot and buzzing insects. There was no road here, only narrow ridges of mud between stagnant pools, and trees bent low like old men keeping secrets. By the second day, his food was gone. By the third, he was sure something followed him. He would catch glimpses between the trees, ripples in still water, a pale shape beneath the surface, a reflection that lingered when he moved. Once, he saw eyes in the dark, green and glimmering, and heard a soft voice say his name. When night came, He dared not sleep. The sword at his side whispered too often now, not words but sighs and fragments of laughter, like the echo of a dream he could not wake from. On the 5th night, firelight flickered ahead through the fog. He dismounted, tied his horse to a twisted root, and crept closer. The fire belonged to a cluster of mud huts built on stilts above the water. Figures moved around the flames, crannogmen, small and wiry, their faces painted with mud and ash. At their center sat a woman. Her hair was white as snow, though her skin was smooth, her eyes the color of the deep marsh. When she looked up, Bryn felt as though she had been waiting for him. "Come out, sellsword," she said softly. "The bog keeps no secrets from me." Bryn stepped into the light. "You know my name? I know your burden." Her gaze dropped to the sword wrapped at his side. "It sings loudly, even here. The dead follow its song. I was told the forge that made it lies somewhere in these swamps." The woman nodded. "The black anvil of Valen. You will not find it alone. No man has since the days before dragons flew. Then help me." For a moment, she studied him in silence. "Why should I? That blade was never meant for mortal hands. To touch it is to be claimed." "I've already been claimed," Bryn said. "I just want it ended." The woman rose. "Very well. You speak like one already half dead. Follow me." They left the camp and entered the deeper bogs, where the mist clung thick as wool and the water reached Bryn's knees. Strange lights glimmered beneath the surface, green and shifting, and once he thought he saw the outline of a long, drowned knight kneeling beneath the water, his armor coated with moss. After a time, the woman began to sing, low and soft, a melody that seemed older than the stones of Winterfell. The mists stirred in rhythm with her voice. When the song ended, they stood before a mound of black rock rising from the swamp. "There," she said, "the anvil of Valen. It is not stone, but iron cooled by dragon's breath. Beneath it sleeps the fire that forged your blade." The mound was vast, pitted, and hollowed in places like a broken skull. Bryn felt heat radiating from it, though the air was chill. "What must I do?" he asked. "Enter," she whispered. "If you truly wish to end the sword's hunger, cast it into the forge from whence it came. But know this, fire that births such darkness does not destroy. It remakes. What enters may not return the same." Bryn looked at her. "If I do nothing, it consumes me. If I act, it might consume the world." The woman's expression did not change. "That is the choice of men since the first blade was drawn." He drew the sword. The air around it warped, the runes faintly glowing like embers through smoke. It hummed, deep and slow, as if waking. "Do not," it whispered. "I can give you what you seek. I can give you peace." Bryn stepped toward the opening in the mound. Inside, red light flickered from somewhere deep below, casting the walls in molten hues. The heat was suffocating, the air thick with the stench of sulfur. He climbed down a narrow passage until he reached a cavern of glassy stone and black fire. At the center lay the forge. It was no anvil of man's making, but a mass of fused metal, still glowing with the heat of forgotten ages. Streams of molten fire ran through cracks in the ground, and in their reflection, he saw faces, dozens of them. Lauren, the girl, the soldiers he had slain. "You cannot silence what was never meant to sleep," the voices whispered. "We are your shadow, Bryn Carver. Cast us away, and you cast yourself." He raised the sword high. "Then we burn together." The blade screamed as he drove it into the forge. Black flame erupted, swallowing him whole. Pain unlike anything he had known tore through his body, fire in his veins, lightning in his bones. The sword writhed in his grasp like a living thing, its voice a chorus of agony and rage. The cavern shook, the iron walls cracking under the force. Then came silence. When Bryn opened his eyes, he stood at the cavern's edge. The forge still burned, but the sword was gone. In its place, where the blade had struck, a dark crystal pulsed faintly, like a living heart. He stared at it, breath ragged. "Is it done?" "No," said a voice behind him, the woman's, though it echoed strangely. She stood in the doorway, her eyes glowing faintly red. "You have fed it your soul. It is bound to you still, only changed." He looked down at his hands. Black veins ran beneath the skin, faintly glowing with the same dull crimson. When he flexed his fingers, the air trembled. "What am I?" "The last warden of the flame," she said softly. "Its prison and its keeper, until another comes to take your place." He wanted to speak, to curse her, to demand release, but the words caught in his throat. Something moved within him, something vast and cold. The whispers were gone, yet in their place lay a silence heavier than death. The woman turned to leave. "You will wander, Bryn Carver. You will forget your name, your face, your purpose. That is the mercy of the fire. But remember this: when the night grows deepest and the dead once more seek warmth, they will call for you." He stumbled out into the swamp, the morning gray and wet. The mists closed behind him, erasing the path. By dusk, he reached the edge of the bog and looked back. The mound was gone. Only still water remained. He touched his chest where the sword's pulse had once been and felt nothing. No heartbeat. Only heat, faint and steady, deep as the earth itself. In the distance, thunder rolled. He turned east, toward the fading light, and began to walk, alone, unarmed, but not empty. Behind him, the waters of the neck rippled as if something vast had stirred beneath. And when the storm broke, its wind carried a whisper, not of warning, but of recognition. We are not gone. We wait. Autumn settled over the riverlands like a shroud, and with it came strange tales. Peasants spoke of fire flickering beneath the waters of the God's Eye, of whispers rising from the marshes, of shadows walking when the moon was thin. The Meisters dismissed it as peasants' gossip. The small folk crossed themselves and stayed indoors after dusk. And far from them all, a lone rider moved through the fog. Bryn Carver, or what had once been Bryn, no longer felt hunger nor cold. The days bled into one another, each as gray as the last. His reflection no longer matched his memory. The eyes were darker now, almost black, the skin drawn taut, his veins faintly luminous when touched by moonlight. He remembered little of the woman in the swamp, or of the fire beneath the earth, only that when he had left that place, the air had seemed to breathe with him. The world whispered. He could hear them all now, the rivers, the trees, even the stones. Each had a voice, low and mournful, carrying secrets of ages past. And among them, faint and persistent, came another sound, a heartbeat, distant but familiar. He followed it north, through woods stripped bare by wind, through villages too afraid to meet his gaze. When he entered taverns, men fell silent, dogs whined and fled. Once, a boy ran to him, begging for help. His sister had been taken by something from the river. Bryn followed, and when he found the creature, half-rotted, wrapped in weeds, it fell at a single glance. The fire within him surged, unbidden, and left the corpse nothing but ash. He did not understand what he was becoming. only that his presence drew the dead as fire draws moths. By the time he reached the ruins of Stonehenge, the heart's call was stronger. It came from the north, beyond the Green Fork, where the wind carried the scent of snow. There, he met the first of them, the remnants of a host bound for Winterfell, men wearing patched cloaks and fear in their eyes. Their leader was a knight, Sir Adam Piper. His red hair turned silver with dust and grief. "Who are you, stranger?" Adam asked, lowering his spear. "Lost," Bryn said simply. The knight studied him, brow furrowed. "You've the look of a ghost." "Perhaps I am." The men muttered uneasily, but Adam gestured for silence. "We go north," he said. "The Starks called for men to defend against what's stirring beyond the wall. You'd be welcome if you can wield that fire I saw in your eyes." "I have no sword," Bryn said. "Then take mine." Adam unbuckled the blade at his hip and offered it. Bryn hesitated, then grasped it. The moment he did, the metal grew warm, faintly pulsing as if alive. He saw the knight's surprise. "It remembers flame," Bryn murmured. For a time he rode with them, days spent marching through cold rain, nights spent huddled beneath thin tents. The men grew used to him, though they did not speak his name aloud. They called him Ashborn, for his silence and the faint heat that followed in his wake. But peace does not hold long in a cursed man's shadow. One night, beneath a sky veiled in storm clouds, the dead found them. It began with a whisper, then the scream of horses. Shapes moved through the darkness, gaunt and swift, eyes burning pale blue. The camp erupted, swords clashed, the air filled with the stench of rot and ice. Bryn stood among the chaos, and something within him woke. The fire beneath his skin blazed, his veins burned red, his breath turned to smoke. He raised his hand, and from his palm burst a torrent of black flame that devoured the first white where it stood. Men stared, terrified. Even as the enemy fell, they backed from him. Adam shouted, "By the Seven, what are you?" Bryn's answer was lost in the roar. The fire swept outward, searing flesh from bone. The whites crumbled, but so did the tents, the wagons, the men who stood too near. When the storm cleared, nothing but ashes remained. Only Bryn and Adam still stood. The knight's armor was scorched, his hair half burned, yet his eyes held no hatred, only sorrow. "You saved us," he said hoarsely. "But at what cost?" Bryn looked at his hands, still wreathed in faint red light. "All things burn," he said softly. They buried the dead in silence. Adam's remaining men fled before dawn, whispering of demons and cursed fire. Only the knight stayed. "You can't go north," Adam told him. "The wall won't have you. No lord would." "I don't seek the wall," Bryn replied. "I seek the flame that calls me." "Then the gods help you, for no man can." They parted at the river's bend. Adam rode west, back toward River Run and Ruin. Bryn turned north alone. For days he wandered the cold marshes that bordered the neck, his steps guided by that rhythmic pulse. The world grew quieter with each mile. Even the crows fell silent when he passed. On the seventh night, he reached the edge of a frozen fen. The moon hung low, and its light touched something half buried in the mud, a shard of metal, black as night, pulsing faintly. The sword, the heart of ashes. It had returned just as the fray had warned. Bryn fell to his knees, staring at it. "Why?" he whispered. The blade shimmered, and from its surface came a voice, soft and familiar. "Because you are not done." He reached out, hand trembling. "I cast you away. You cast yourself away. But we are bound, you and I. You carry the fire. I carry its memory. Then what am I to do? Finish what was begun." The dead rise again in the north. The fire must meet the ice. Bryn's chest ached. He remembered tales of the others, of the White Walkers and their endless winter. He had not believed them, not truly, but the cold wind that blew across the fen carried something more than frost. It carried hunger. He closed his hand around the blade's hilt. The warmth returned, steady and terrible. "Then north I go," he said. The sword pulsed once in answer. "And I with you." At dawn, he rode again, through snow that fell thicker with every mile. Behind him, the riverlands lay gray and broken. Before him, the world stretched white and empty, waiting. And though no sound followed him, no living soul walked by his side, his shadow burned faintly on the snow, dark and flickering like fire in the wind. He did not look back, for he knew that somewhere beyond the wall, another heart was beating, a heart older than his curse, colder than death itself. And when the fire and ice met again, the song of the world would change forever. Snow fell thicker as Bryn rode northward, until the land itself seemed made of nothing but silence and white. The trees stood bare and frozen, their branches clawing at the low gray sky. Beneath his horse's hooves, the river had turned to solid ice. The air burned his lungs with every breath. He had not seen another living soul for days. Villages lay empty, the hearths long cold. At night, he found doors torn from their hinges, walls scarred by claws, and the marks of dragging feet in the snow. Each place told the same story. People fled, or something worse had taken them. Sometimes, when the wind fell quiet, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him, never close enough to see, never distant enough to ignore. The sword whispered less now, as though conserving its strength. But when he slept, his dreams were filled with the cries of the dead, the Meister's laughter, the girl's pleading voice, the hiss of black fire consuming flesh. On the 10th day, he saw the wall. It rose like a mountain of blue crystal, vast and endless, its top lost in the storm clouds. Once, it had been the pride of the realm. Now it was half buried in snow, its towers unmanned. No watchman called down from above, no torches burned. When he reached the gate, he found it open. The great ice tunnel stretched before him, long and hollow, filled with shadows. The wind moaned through it like a dying beast. Bryn led his horse inside. His footsteps echoed for what felt like miles before he emerged on the other side. The land beyond was not dead. It was waiting. Dark forests stretched as far as the eye could see, their trunks rimed with frost. The air was sharp, filled with a faint blue mist. Somewhere in the distance, something moved, slow, deliberate, heavy. Bryn pressed on. He traveled for 2 days into that frozen wilderness before he found the fire. It burned low in a hollow between 2 hills, its light flickering against the snow. Beside it sat a woman wrapped in furs, her hair white as frost, her eyes pale and cold. "Come no closer," she said softly. "The fire burns only for the living." "I am alive," Bryn replied. The woman tilted her head. Not entirely. Her gaze drifted to the sword at his side. "That thing is death given form. Why bring it here?" "It led me," he said. "It seeks something." "The fire," she murmured. "The balance." She stood, moving with the grace of a wolf. "Once, I was of the free folk. They called me Nella. Now I serve another, one who waits for the end of all things. You should not have come." Bryn's hand went to the hilt. "Then tell me what lies ahead." She smiled faintly. "Ice, fire, a war that has never ended. The fire in your veins is old, older than dragons. It was born to fight what wakes now in the far north." "Then that's where I go." She stepped closer, And when you find it, will you burn the world to save it? Bryn did not answer. Nella looked at him for a long moment, then reached into the folds of her cloak. From it, she drew a small crystal shard, clear as frozen tears. "Take this," she said. "It is dragon glass, from before the wall was raised. If the fire fails you, this will not." He accepted it, and for a moment their fingers touched. She flinched as though burned. "Go," she whispered, "and may the gods pity you." He left her by the fire, vanishing into the snow. The days that followed blurred together, storm, hunger, endless white. He saw no sun, only pale light through the clouds. His horse died on the 12th day, frozen where it stood. Bryn left it without looking back. The sword sustained him now. He did not sleep, did not tire. His body felt light, hollow, filled only with that deep, steady heat. At last, he reached the forest's heart. There the snow thinned, revealing a clearing of black ice. In its center stood a figure cloaked in gray. Its face was hidden, its breath misting faintly in the frigid air. Bryn felt the world still around them. "You've come far," the figure said, voice cold as winter, "and still you burn." "Who are you?" Bryn asked. "A memory, a warning. Once I was human, before the cold took me." The figure lowered its hood. Its skin was pale as snow, its eyes the color of glacier ice. "I am what your kind calls other." Bryn raised his sword. "Then I am your enemy." "Enemy?" The creature's lips curved faintly. "We are kin, you and I, both born of powers older than men. The fire in you was made to fight the ice in me, but together we are balance. Without one, the other devours all." "I saw what your balance does," Bryn said. "Villages drowned in frost, corpses walking." "Mortals cling to warmth," the other said softly. "But warmth breeds chaos. Fire consumes. You have felt it, haven't you? The hunger in your blood." Bryn hesitated. His veins still glowed faintly beneath the skin. The sword trembled in his hand, as though eager. The creature took a step forward. "You are dying, Bryn Carver. The fire inside you eats your flesh. Give it to me, and I will still it. Together, we can forge a new dawn, cold, pure, unending." Bryn looked down at the blade. The runes shimmered faintly red. Within its depths, he thought he saw his reflection, and behind it, all the faces that haunted him. He remembered the girl's voice. "You freed me, but you freed him too. I will not trade one curse for another," he said. "The other side, then burn." It moved like wind, faster than sight. The world blurred, ice flashed. Bryn barely parried the blow. The impact sent him sprawling, his body screaming with pain. The sword fell from his grasp, skidding across the ice. The creature loomed above him, spear raised. "This is mercy." Bryn's hand brushed the crystal shard at his belt. He seized it, thrust upward, and drove it into the creature's chest. The crack of shattering ice echoed through the clearing. The other's eyes widened, its form splintering like glass. It screamed, a sound like breaking stone, and dissolved into mist. The ground split open. From the fissure rose black fire and white frost, twisting together in a storm of light. Bryn staggered to his feet, reaching for the sword. The runes flared once, brilliant as the sun, and then the world went dark. When he awoke, he lay alone on the frozen ground. The clearing was gone. So was the sword. Only the dragonglass shard remained, blackened and warm. Far to the north, the sky shimmered with a strange light, neither dawn nor dusk, but something between. Bryn rose slowly, his breath misting. His body felt lighter than before, his scars gone. The heat within him dimmed to an ember. The balance had shifted, but in whose favor, he did not know. He turned his face toward the endless white horizon where the light still danced, and began to walk. The northern sky burned with strange light. Veins of green and violet rippled across the heavens like wounds that refused to close. The wildlings called it the fire curtain, a sign that the world itself was waking. Bryn Carver had no name for it, but its glow followed him wherever he walked, casting his shadow long and thin upon the snow. He had wandered beyond the wall for many days now, though the passage of time meant little. He did not eat. He did not tire. The warmth in his chest, faint though it was, sustained him. Sometimes he wondered if he still lived. His breath smoked in the cold, yet his heart beat slower than any man's should. He was neither living nor dead, neither free nor bound. The forest gave way to open tundra, a vast plain of snow stretching toward the horizon. The wind howled across it, carrying whispers in tongues long forgotten. Each night, the whispers grew louder. They spoke of fire and blood, of thrones of ash, of kings who would never die. Bryn tried not to listen, but the voices seeped through every silence. At last, he reached the place the free folk once called Frostfang Vale, a narrow ravine where the ice ran black and the wind sang like a blade. There he found the ruins of a keep, its stones half buried in frost, its gates broken. He stepped through the shattered archway. Inside, the walls glowed faintly with veins of blue light, like frozen rivers running through the rock. In the courtyard stood a single figure. It was a man, or what had once been one. His armor was rimed with frost, his face pale and still beneath a crown of ice. His eyes burned faintly blue, but not with malice. They were the eyes of someone who had waited far too long. "You have come," the man said, his voice echoing strangely in the cold. Bryn stopped. "Who are you?" "I was called Lord Rendell Stark once, Warden of the North, before the first wall fell." The man's voice was calm, measured. "I have guarded this place since before your great-grandfathers were dust." Bryn frowned. "The Starks have ruled the North for thousands of years." "Aye," said Rendell, "and some of us never left." He looked Bryn over, studying the faint red glow that pulsed beneath his skin. "You carry fire where no fire should live. It's what keeps me walking," Bryn said, "and what kills everything you touch." The old lord's gaze was neither cruel nor kind. "I know your burden. I once carried a blade much like yours." "The heart of ashes?" "A shard of it," Rendell said, "forged to hold the balance. When it was broken, the curse spread. You are the vessel now, the last ember of what once kept the realms apart." Bryn's jaw tightened. "Then tell me how to end it." The ancient lord turned toward the keep's inner gate. "There is only one way. The fire must meet its opposite, willingly. You must give it to the cold, not as foe, but as offering." "You mean to die?" "To die, and to be remade," Rendell said. "When the first fire met the first frost, the world was born. When they meet again, perhaps it will heal." He motioned for Bryn to follow. They walked through the ruined hall until they reached a frozen pool at its heart. Beneath the ice, faint blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. "The Well of Souls," Rendell said. "Every spirit the cold has ever claimed sleeps here. This is where the long night began." Bryn knelt, brushing frost from the surface. The light beneath seemed to stir, swirling slowly in answer to his touch. "You would have me give my fire to this," he said. "You would have me vanish into it." Rendell's expression did not change. "Not vanish. Become part of it. The flame cannot exist without the frost, nor the frost without the flame. You are what the world has been waiting for." The air grew heavy, The blue glow beneath the ice brightened until it filled the hall with ghostly light. Shadows danced along the walls, and faint whispers rose from the depths, voices soft and distant, calling his name. He closed his eyes. He saw again the faces of those who had died by his hand. The girl, Lisa, the maester, the soldiers in the camp, the knight who had trusted him. They were waiting. "I was a sellsword once," he whispered. "I fought for coin, for cause, for nothing at all. I never sought this." "No one ever does," said Rendal. "Great burdens choose the unwilling. Will you bear it to the end?" Bryn looked into the well once more. The light seemed to breathe. His chest ached with the rhythm of it, as though his heart and the frozen pool beat as one. He drew a deep breath. The air scorched his lungs. "So be it." He stepped forward. The ice cracked beneath his boots. He felt the cold seep through him, not like frost, but like memory, sharp, pure, unending. He closed his eyes and let it come. The heat within him surged in answer, a tide of red and gold flame that burned brighter than the sun. The two forces met with a sound like thunder. The hall shook, the ground split, light filled the world, white, blue, crimson, all at once. Beneath the keep, the ice melted. The river of souls rose, swirling around him. He heard them singing now. 1,000 voices joined in harmony, neither mourning nor joy. Then, silence. When the light faded, the ruin was gone. Only a single figure stood where the pool had been, a man of neither flesh nor ice, cloaked in steam. His eyes glowed faintly, one blue, one red. Bryn Carver had become something else. He stepped out into the falling snow. The storm had stilled. The wind was warm. Far to the south, he could see faint fires burning along the horizon. The wall shimmered faintly, no longer blue, but silver, alive again. He could feel the balance within him, fragile but whole. The voices were quiet now. The sword was gone, the fire tempered. Behind him, the ice where the keep had stood froze smooth once more, untouched by time. He looked up at the sky. The fire curtain still glowed, but softer now, like dawn after endless night. He began to walk, each step leaving neither print nor shadow. Somewhere in the distance, a raven cried. Somewhere beyond the snow, the world began to thaw. And though the man who had once been Bryn Carver no longer knew hunger, nor sleep, nor fear, he felt something stir in his chest that was not fire and not cold. It was peace. The long night had not ended, nor had it begun anew. It had simply exhaled, waiting, as all things must, for balance to return. And when the wind carried his name across the frozen fields, it was no longer a curse, nor a warning. It was a song. Winter's breath lingered long upon the north, but it was no longer the deathly cold that once ruled there. The snow still fell, yet beneath it, new shoots of green dared to break through. In the months after the storm of fire and frost, strange tales spread among the free folk and the watchmen who had returned to the wall. They spoke of a traveler who walked the frozen wilds barefoot, leaving no prints behind, his eyes like twin embers beneath a crown of frost. Some called him ghost, others called him god. None dared follow him for long. Bryn Carver did not think of himself as either. He wandered through the thawing lands, past broken forts and valleys where the dead had once walked. The air was heavy with silence. The rivers that had frozen solid now ran clear again, and the forests whispered his name not in fear, but in memory. Yet, wherever he went, men felt the warmth of his passing and the faint shimmer of cold that followed. Balance, he thought, the last gift of the fire and the frost. He found no joy in it, nor sorrow, only purpose. One night, as he walked along the banks of a river newly freed from ice, he came upon a campfire. 4 travelers huddled close to it, a woman with a babe at her breast, 2 young men with cloaks too thin for the chill, and an old soldier whose armor bore the mark of a stag. When they saw him, they stiffened, hands going to knives. "I mean no harm," Bryn said softly. His voice was low, almost human again. "I seek only warmth." The old soldier eyed him warily. "There's no warmth left in the wilds. You'll find none here." "Then why do you stay?" Bryn asked. The man hesitated, then sighed. "The babe took sick. We'd thought to cross the wall, but the roads are closed. We can't go farther." Bryn looked down at the child. Its skin was pale, lips blue, breath shallow. The mother's eyes were rimmed red from weeping. He knelt beside them, his hand hovering over the infant. The warmth within him stirred, ancient, patient, alive. "May I?" he asked. The woman nodded, trembling. Bryn touched the child's brow. The air grew still. For a moment, light flickered faintly beneath his fingers, red and white mingled, the color of dawn. The child stirred, then drew a deep breath and began to cry. The mother gasped, clutching her babe close. The soldier fell to his knees. "Seven, save us," he whispered. "What are you?" Bryn rose slowly. "No one," he said. "A man who burned once and was not consumed. They begged him to stay the night, but before dawn he was gone. Only a circle of melted snow remained where he had sat. He walked south. Each village he passed bore signs of his touch. Fields that had withered through endless frost now sprouted again. The lakes no longer froze over, yet with life returned danger. The lands that had lain silent too long now whispered of old things waking beneath the earth, things neither wholly cold nor hot, born of the mingling of his two halves. By the time he reached the riverlands, spring had come. Harrenhal still stood upon the lake, black and broken. Smoke curled faintly from its highest tower, though no living soul was said to dwell there. Bryn crossed the causeway once more. The air hummed with memory. Inside the ruin, the shadows were familiar, yet softer now. The ghosts that had once wailed in torment moved quietly through the halls, their shapes dim and peaceful. The curse had lessened. The stone no longer wept blood. He descended to the crypt where it had all begun. The floor was scarred where the heartstone had shattered. The air smelled of ash and water. He knelt there, resting his hand upon the stone. "I have walked the long road," he said aloud, though no one answered. "The fire sleeps, the cold dreams. I am all that remains between them." The echo of his voice faded into stillness. Then a faint light glimmered at the edge of the room. A woman stood there, her hair pale as smoke, her face soft with sorrow. "Lysa, you kept your promise," she whispered. Bryn bowed his head. "I freed you, and still it cost everything. You gave the world balance again." Her voice trembled like wind through leaves. "The curse is ended. Then why do you linger?" "Because you do." He looked up. Her form wavered like mist. "You are no longer bound. Go to peace." "I cannot," she said gently. "You carry too much of me still." Bryn touched his chest. Beneath his ribs, he felt that same steady warmth, the echo of the fire, the trace of her soul entwined with his. "Then let me carry it," he said, "for as long as the world endures." She smiled. "Then I will walk beside you, though unseen." Her image faded with the light, leaving only silence. When Bryn rose, he felt lighter, though he did not know why. He left the ruin behind, the waters of the God's Eye calm and clear beneath the rising sun. Word of him spread again, though none agreed on what they had seen. Some said he was a sorcerer of the old days. Others whispered he was the ghost of Harrenhal itself, walking the land to make amends for the sins of fire and blood. Minstrels sang of a man who healed with one hand and burned with the other, who could summon rain in drought and snow in summer. He became legend before he knew it, and legends in time become prayers. Years passed, or perhaps centuries, for time flowed differently for him now. The kingdoms rose and fell, the names of kings forgotten, their castles swallowed by ivy and earth. Still he walked, never aging, never resting, guarding the fragile line between flame and frost. On the night the red star fell, a fiery stone that lit the sky from horizon to horizon, he stood upon a lonely hill and watched the heavens burn. The air was warm, the wind smelled of rain. He felt the fire within him stir once more, restless, yearning. He closed his eyes. "Not yet," he whispered. "The world still dreams." When morning came, the hill was empty. Only a single circle of ash remained, and within it, a new sapling grew, its leaves half white, half crimson, shining in the dawn light. The people who found it later built a shrine there, calling it the Tree of Balance. They said a man had walked out of winter and brought spring with him. They said his name was Bryn Carver, though none could agree on what he had been. And when storms darkened the land again, when fire and ice rose once more to war, they prayed to him, the wanderer between worlds, the keeper of the flame and the frost. Some said he answered. Some said he never left. But those who ventured north, where the wall once stood, swore that on clear nights, when the wind fell still, they saw a figure walking along the horizon, cloak of smoke and snow, eyes like dawn and dusk. And wherever he went, the world followed in balance. Long years passed, and the seasons turned as they always had, yet the songs of the realm still spoke of him. Children of the Riverlands whispered tales of the Ashborn king who walked the borders of the living and the dead. In the north, they told stories of a wanderer who could still the fiercest blizzard with a glance or call flame from frozen rivers. Southron meisters dismissed these tales as superstition, yet even they could not explain why. When drought struck the reach or the Dorne winds turned cruel, the storms always broke after a single night of strange red light upon the clouds. Bryn Carver did not know of the songs. He did not seek worship. He walked where the land called him, answering its pain as one might answer a whisper in a dream. In spring, he wandered the Riverlands, where old battlefields still reeked of blood long dried. In summer, he walked the forests of the Vale, where beasts once turned savage now grew calm in his passing, and when the snows came again, he turned northward, for he could feel it, the slow stirring of something vast and ancient beneath the earth. He crossed the frozen lakes of the north and the silent woods beyond. At times he thought he heard voices, the murmuring of trees, the sigh of rivers thawing beneath the ice. The balance he had forged so long ago was shifting once more, tilting toward one side. The world was never still. Fire and frost were never content to rest. By the time he reached the ruins of Castle Black, the wind had turned sharp as knives. The wall no longer stood. Its shattered remnants glittered across the plain like shards of crystal. Where the watch had once kept vigil, snow had swallowed the stones. Bryn climbed what was left of the great gate and looked north, his eyes reflecting the pale light of the aurora. There, in the distance, he saw it, the faint blue shimmer of power rising from the heart of the land. Not the dead this time, nor the cold hunger of the others, but something new. Fire and ice intertwined, wild and formless, born of his own making. He descended the slope and followed the light for days until the ground beneath his feet grew warm again. He came to a valley where rivers of melted ice met streams of fire, the two twisting together into mist. In the valley's center stood a child. She could not have been more than 10 years old, her hair white as snow and her eyes deep red like embers. She looked at him without fear. "You took too long," she said. Bryn stopped. "Who are you?" "I am the dream you left behind," the girl replied. "The world remembers both warmth and cold. When you gave yourself to the balance, you planted the seed of both within the land. I am its bloom." He felt the truth in her words. The warmth in his chest stirred an answer. "Then you are me?" "Partly," she said, tilting her head. "And partly everything you touched. The girl from Harrenhal, the dead you burned, the frost you mended, the fire you spared. I am the memory of what you were and what the world will become." The air trembled. Around them, the valley shone brighter, the mingled streams of ice and flame hissing where they met. "Why have you come?" he asked. "To finish it." Her voice was calm, almost kind. "You brought peace once, but peace is only sleep. Now the world wakes again, and it needs more than balance. It needs choice." Bryn's eyes narrowed. "Choice brings ruin. Ruin brings rebirth." She raised her hand, and fire and frost swirled around her. "You can walk forever, guarding the line between them, but nothing endures by standing still. The fire in men's hearts and the cold beyond the world, they will rise whether you will it or not. What you are cannot end it, only begin it." Bryn stepped closer. "Then what would you have me do?" The girl smiled faintly. "You already know." And he did. The warmth inside him surged, the faint ember he had carried for centuries flaring once more. The sky above darkened, the aurora deepening to crimson and blue. The valley trembled as though the world itself were drawing breath. Bryn knelt before the child. "Then take it," he said. "Take what remains of me." Her eyes softened. "It will cost you everything." "It already has." She reached out, her hand small and cold against his chest. The heat within him answered, rising in a flood of light. The world went white. He saw again every path he had walked, every life touched by his flame. He saw Lysa's smile as she faded, the maester's eyes as he begged for knowledge, the villages reborn from frost. He saw the first snow he had ever felt as a boy, and the last battle he had fought as a man. All of it merged into one endless moment of fire meeting ice, of destruction giving birth to stillness. When the light faded, the valley was gone. In its place stretched a vast plain where grass grew green beneath the melting snow. Rivers ran clear. The mountains smoked faintly where fire still lived, but no longer raged. The sky was bright and calm, and in the center stood the girl, older now, her eyes no longer red, but soft gray, like dawn. She looked down at the single ember that lay in her palm, the last trace of Bryn Carver. She closed her hand over it. The ember vanished. Far away, in the riverlands, the folk spoke of a sudden warmth that swept across the land that spring. Crops rose twice their height, and the lakes cleared of mist. In the north, the long snows broke. In the south, the heat gentled. No one saw the girl walking across the plains where fire met ice, nor the way the earth bent toward her as she passed. They did not know her name. But sometimes, when the wind blew from the north, it carried the sound of a man's voice, deep and distant, neither sorrowful nor glad. Keep the balance. And when night fell, the stars shone brighter than they ever had, as if the heavens themselves remembered him. The girl walked on, alone yet never lonely, her shadow stretching long behind her, dark as soot and bright as frost. She would be the next keeper of the world, not of peace, but of choice. Fire and ice, together at last, not in war, not in silence, but in song. And though the name Bryn Carver faded from men's lips, the legend endured, the man who bridged flame and frost, whose heart remade the seasons. In time, they called him not Ashborn, not cursed, not hero, but simply the balance. And when the spring wind carried warmth to the north, the children of the realm would pause, lift their faces to the air, and whisper the old words of the song that never truly ended. Between fire and frost he walks still, unseen and eternal, the man who burned, the man who froze, the man who taught the world to breathe again. The ages that followed would be remembered only in fragments, ruins half buried, songs half forgotten, tales told by hearthfire when storms rattled the shutters. Time moved as it always had, yet beneath its steady rhythm, the memory of one man endured, subtle as breath, patient as frost. The balance, they called him in old tongues. Some claimed he had vanished into the north, others that he had become the spirit of the land itself, watching over both the frozen wastes and the green vales beyond. The girl who had carried his last ember grew to womanhood. Her name was never spoken in the histories of men, but those who dwelt near the newly healed lands between the neck and the north whispered of a pale wanderer who could command the seasons with her touch. She did not rule, nor claim titles. She merely walked, as he had, and wherever she went, life and death followed in harmony. In her 21st year, she felt the first tremor in the balance. It came on a night when the air was still and the moon hung huge and blood-red above the world. The rivers slowed, though no frost lay upon them. Fires burned low in their hearths, though no wind touched them. The stars themselves seemed to dim, and in her heart, where Bryn's ember had slept, she felt a stirring. "Not yet," she whispered to the dark. But the darkness had its own will. She journeyed north, retracing the path Bryn had once walked. Where he had seen endless winter, she found a land awakening. Forests sprouting through snow, rivers running warm beneath a pale mist. Yet there was unease in the air. The beasts of the wild moved restlessly. The wolves howled without cease, and the sky shivered with thin streaks of green fire. At last, she reached the plains where the wall had once stood. Only scattered shards of ice remained, glimmering like broken glass beneath the aurora. Beyond them stretched the open north, and in the far distance rose a glow unlike any dawn she had ever seen. It was neither fire nor frost, but something between, a shifting storm of light that rolled like a tide upon the horizon. She felt its pull in her blood. When she entered the storm, the world fell silent. Snowflakes hung motionless in the air, suspended like stars. Beneath her feet, the ground was neither ice nor earth, but glass, reflecting endless sky. And there, at the storm's heart, she saw him. Bryn Carver stood unchanged, his cloak of smoke and snow rippling in the still air. His eyes burned softly, one red, one blue. Around him the storm turned, fed by his breath. He looked upon her not as stranger, nor as ghost, but as one who had been waiting. "You came," he said. "I felt the world shifting," she answered. "You should not be here. You gave yourself to the well." "I was called back," Bryn said quietly. "Balance endures only so long as one guards it. When you were born, the fire and frost in me found shape again. But something else came with them, something older than both." "What is it?" she asked. The silence. The word echoed through the air like thunder without sound. The light around them dimmed. It is the end that waits between breaths, Bryn said. When fire and frost rest, when life and death cease their dance, the silence feeds. It grows from stillness, from peace that lasts too long. The world has slept, and now it hungers. The girl's pulse quickened. Then we must wake it again. Bryn smiled faintly. And unmake all you have healed? You carry warmth in your hands, daughter of my flame. I carry the cold memory of what must die. The silence will yield only to one of us, and the other must fall. Her throat tightened. You would have me destroy you? If it saves the world, he said softly, then yes. The storm shifted, brightening to blinding white. The ground cracked beneath them. From its fissures rose shapes without form, shadows that devoured light, whispers without voices. The silence had found them. Bryn drew from his side a blade that was not metal, but living flame and frost interwoven, its edge humming with the power of both. It remembers us, he murmured. The girl raised her hands, the air around her shimmering with the same red-white glow. Then let us end it together. They met in silence. The clash of their powers made no sound, only light, terrible, beautiful, endless. Fire met frost, warmth met chill, creation met stillness. The world quivered beneath them, mountains cracking, seas boiling, skies splitting into rivers of color. For hours, or perhaps ages, they fought, neither yielding. Each strike they traded echoed across time, stirring the sleeping earth. Forests sprang from stone, then turned to ash. Rivers froze and burst anew. The battle was the heartbeat of the world. At last, the silence began to break. The shadows drew back, hissing like smoke in rain. The girl stood trembling, her strength fading, her light flickering. Bryn caught her as she fell, cradling her against his chest. "It is done," she whispered. "Not yet," he said. "It must have a keeper." He pressed his palm to her heart. The last ember within her flared one final time. "Take my warmth," she said weakly. "Take it and keep the world breathing." He shook his head. "The fire belongs to life. I will hold the cold once more. Go south. The world will need warmth." The storm rose again, wrapping around them in spirals of light. She tried to speak, but her voice was lost in the wind. Then she was gone, borne away on a wave of fire toward the horizon. When the storm cleared, the valley where the wall had once stood was reborn. Ice and earth melted together into rivers that shimmered with gold light. The shadows of the silence had vanished, and where Bryn Carver stood, there was now a figure of crystal and frost, unmoving, eyes closed, hands outstretched, as if holding the wind itself still. The last guardian of balance, bound once more to keep the world between flame and chill. Centuries would pass, and snow would cover him, then melt again. Forests would grow around that place, their roots warmed by hidden fire. The people who came later would call it the Valley of Breath, for even when the air was still, the leaves there swayed, as if the land itself exhaled. In their temples, they told of two, the Flameborn who walked south and brought spring to men, and the Ashborn who waited in the north, dreaming the seasons into motion. And though the world changed and kings forgot their names, the balance held. For somewhere beneath the sleeping ice, the heart of Bryn Carver beat still, slow, steady, eternal, marking time not for himself, but for all things that live between fire and frost. The seasons turned once more, slow and patient, as if the world itself feared to disturb the stillness that followed Bryn's sacrifice. Spring came timidly at first, creeping through thawing fields and forests still wrapped in sleep. Yet with each passing year, the sun lingered longer, the rivers ran clearer, and life returned to lands that had forgotten warmth. In the far north, where mountains of ice met endless snow, the valley that men called the Valley of Breath remained untouched by age. Trees of pale silver bark grew there, their leaves faintly glowing in the dark. Streams wound between them like veins of light, and the air shimmered faintly, as though each gust were alive. At the valley's heart stood the figure of Crystal and Frost, the guardian who had once been Bryn Carver. His form was half encased in ice, yet his face was calm, eyes closed in eternal rest. Around him, the earth pulsed faintly with warmth. Each winter that threatened to deepen found its edge blunted here, each drought quenched by the rain that drifted south from this place. The balance endured, but nothing in the world remains undisturbed forever. Far to the south, the kingdoms of men had grown proud again. Centuries had dulled the memory of the wars between ice and fire. Kings rose and fell, houses burned and rebuilt. The Meisters wrote their books, their ink smelling of certainty. To them, tales of the balance were myths, convenient stories told to explain the seasons or frighten children into prayer. Yet beneath their learning, the old world still breathed. It began with small things, storms that came too early, crops that refused to sprout, strange lights in the northern sky that shimmered even in summer. The small folk whispered of omens, of the world losing its rhythm. And in quiet places, priests of forgotten gods began to murmur of a prophecy half remembered. When silence wakes again, fire and frost must walk once more. One night, deep in the Valley of Breath, the air grew still. The leaves ceased their endless swaying. The streams froze mid-flow. For the first time in 1,000 years, the heart of the world skipped a beat. The ice around Bryn Carver cracked. At first it was only a hairline fracture, a faint whisper that echoed through the valley like the sigh of an old god stirring from slumber. Then another crack followed, and another, until the sound filled the air, sharp and beautiful as breaking glass. The light returned to his eyes, one blue, one red. He drew a single breath. The frost melted from his lips. He remembered everything. The wars, the girl, the storm, the silence that had nearly devoured all, and the peace that had followed. Too soon, he murmured. It is too soon. But the air around him told another story. The streams were frozen solid. The leaves shuddered as if afraid. The balance trembled again, this time not from war, but from neglect. The world's harmony had faded under the weight of human greed. He stepped forward, the ice falling away in glittering shards. Beneath his bare feet, the snow hissed and steamed. The valley itself seemed to breathe in relief. Yet even as he looked upon it, Bryn knew the truth. His awakening was no gift. It was a summons. Something had changed in the far south. He could feel it like a knife in the air. A new fire burned there, not born of dragons nor forged in the old ways, but something born of men's pride. It called to him, wild and raw, as if daring the world to remember what balance truly meant. He turned southward and began to walk. Where he passed, the land stirred. Rivers that had forgotten their source ran again. Old trees shed their bark and grew anew. But in his wake, frost crept at the edges of the light, a faint reminder of the cost of harmony. Days blurred into nights. Mountains rose and fell behind him. He crossed the ruins of Winterfell, now buried in moss and snow, and paused before what remained of the Godswood. The heart tree still stood, its bark white as bone, its face worn smooth by time. Beneath its roots, a faint ember pulsed, the echo of another life. "You watched me once," he whispered to the old tree. "Do you still watch now?" No answer came, but the wind shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a raven called. He followed it south. In time, he reached the riverlands. What had once been a patchwork of castles and fields was now wild country again. The ruins of Harrenhal still loomed over the lake, though the melted towers had long since collapsed into heaps of black stone. Moss and ivy claimed what dragons had scarred. The waters of the God's Eye were still and deep, reflecting the stars that now burned a strange shade of crimson. Bryn stood at the shore, his reflection flickering in the dark water. He felt something stir beneath it, a memory, faint but insistent. The girl's laughter, her voice, the promise they had made beneath the dying castle. "You will walk until the world is mended." "And yet here I am again," he said softly, "walking still." The lake rippled. A shape moved beneath the surface, faint and golden. Then a voice, soft as breath, rose from the depths. "You are not alone." He turned, and from the water stepped a woman wreathed in light. Her hair flowed like sunlight through glass, her eyes the color of morning frost. Though she bore little of the child he remembered, he knew her. "You kept walking," she said, smiling, "as you always promised." "I thought you gone." "Part of me was," she answered, "but part of me remained. The balance does not end, Bryn. It changes." The warmth of her presence filled the air. The lake steamed, the frost upon the stones receding. "Why have I been woken?" he asked. "Because men have forgotten," she said. "They burn the world to feed their hunger, and the frost no longer follows to temper them. Fire grows wild again. It calls for its keeper." Bryn bowed his head. "Then I am to bind it once more?" "No," she said gently. "You are to teach it." He frowned. "Teach men?" "Teach them the price of forgetting." The wind shifted. The sky above flared red, the first light of dawn, or perhaps the reflection of some greater fire rising in the south. Bryn looked upon it and felt the old pain return, but also something else, hope, fragile as new snow. "I will go," he said. "And you?" "I will walk beside you," she replied, as before, as always. Together they turned toward the horizon. The air shimmered where they passed, blending warmth and chill into mist, and so the world moved again. The stories would call it the second dawn, when the fire rose from the south to consume kingdoms, and the balance walked once more among men. But in the songs yet to be sung, they would remember the moment the ice cracked and the man of frost and flame drew breath again, neither hero nor god, but the keeper of the world's heartbeat. And wherever he went, the world followed in rhythm, for Bryn Carver walked once more, beneath the red dawn of a world learning again how to breathe. The red dawn rose like a wound across the horizon, staining the clouds in hues of fire and blood. Beneath its glow, Bryn Carver walked southward through the lands of men, his shadow long against the trembling fields. The girl, no longer child, not yet spirit, walked beside him, her steps light as mist, her eyes watching all things. Together they followed the smoke that rose beyond the hills, where the air shimmered with heat and the world whispered of ruin. Villages burned along the riverbanks. The forests were stripped bare. The air reeked of ash and oil. Men had learned to forge fire anew, not with dragon's breath or godly gift, but by their own reckless hunger. They called it the flame of the new age, a power drawn from the earth itself, harnessed in blackened towers that spat smoke into the heavens. And in their pride, they said the old gods were dead, that balance was a myth for children. But the land remembered. When Bryn stepped into their midst, they did not know him. To them, he was a wanderer in rags, a madman with eyes like embers and a voice too calm for war. Yet when he passed, their forges dimmed and their fires flickered low, as if the flames themselves bowed to something older. He came at last to the city of steel, an empire that sprawled across the southern plains, its walls black with soot, its towers clawing the sky. The people there no longer spoke of the Seven, nor the old gods, nor even the dragons. They worshipped only the fire they had chained. Bryn and the girl stood upon a hill overlooking the city. "They've forgotten," she said quietly, "but the fire remembers." He could feel it. The air pulsed with energy, wild and restless, straining against the metal that confined it. It was not the warmth of life, nor the clean burn of light. It was greed made flame, devouring everything it touched. "They do not see what comes," he murmured. "They never do." He descended the hill as night fell. The gates of the city loomed tall, guarded by men with faces masked in soot. They laughed when they saw him. "No beggars pass the gates," one sneered. "Be gone, old man." "I seek only the fire," Bryn said. "You'll find plenty of that in the furnaces," the guard replied, chuckling. "Or in the pit, if you're fool enough to trespass." Bryn looked past him. The flames from the foundries rose high, their light warped and crimson. The ground trembled faintly beneath his feet. "The fire will find me," he said softly. And it did. A rumble shook the city as he stepped forward. Sparks burst from the nearest tower, and the wind turned hot and bitter. The guards shouted, drawing blades, but the air itself turned to glass around them. Heat shimmered, blinding. When the light faded, they were gone. Only dust and shadows remained. Bryn entered the city alone. The streets twisted like veins of metal, lined with pipes that hissed and wept smoke. Men and women fled from him as he passed, clutching their children, whispering prayers they did not believe. Above, the towers groaned, their flames roaring higher, uncontrolled. He reached the central square where the great furnace stood, a vast pit ringed by iron and stone, its core alive with molten fire. It burned brighter than the sun, a heart of chaos. There he saw the man who ruled this age. He wore armor of brass, his face hidden behind a mask that glowed with inner light. "So," the man said, his voice deep and cold, "the ghost of the old world returns." "You have woken the fire," Bryn said, "but not mastered it." "I have done what your kind never could," the man replied. "I have given men dominion over the elements. No gods, no curses, no balance. Only will. Will without restraint is destruction. Destruction is rebirth," said the man. "You should know that better than any." The girl stepped forward, her eyes pale as frost. "You have built your empire upon the bones of the world. You think yourself its master, but you are its fuel." The man laughed. "Let the world burn, if it must. From its ashes, I will build eternity." The ground trembled. The furnace roared higher, spilling flame into the air. The sky above the city turned red as blood. Bryn stepped to the edge of the pit. "You've forgotten the fire's nature," he said. "It does not serve. It devours. And who are you to command it?" Bryn met his gaze, and for the first time in centuries, the full force of his being stirred. The air grew heavy. Frost crept across the stones, meeting the fire's heat in a hiss of steam. "I am its memory," he said, And its end. He raised his hand, and the world split. The flames surged upward, towering higher than the towers themselves. It met the cold that poured from Bryn's palm, a storm of ice and ash colliding. The clash tore the sky open, a roar like 1,000 thunders shaking the earth. Men screamed and fled as the city burned and froze all at once. The towers cracked, the ground heaved. The fire that had been chained for centuries broke free, roaring in joy and fury. The masked man stood firm, his armor melting around him. "You'll destroy everything!" he shouted. "Not destroy," Bryn whispered. "Restore." He spread his arms, and the balance answered. The frost swept through the flames, tempering them. The fire melted the ice, giving it life. For a moment, they danced together, heat and cold, life and death, one heart beating for both. The city vanished in a storm of light. When the dawn came, the plains were quiet again. Where the city had stood lay a great lake, its surface smooth and golden in the morning sun. Steam rose from its center, where something glowed faintly beneath the water. Neither metal nor stone, but light itself, bound and sleeping. Upon the shore stood the girl, alone. She looked down at her reflection. In her eyes, one flickered red, the other blue. Behind her, the wind stirred softly, and a voice she had known since the world's first dawn spoke within her heart. "The balance is yours now." She bowed her head. "Rest, Bryn Carver. Your watch is done." The wind carried no answer, only the sigh of waves against the shore. She turned and walked away, her footsteps leaving no mark upon the sand. The lake shimmered behind her, a mirror of peace and ruin, of warmth and frost. And far above, in the new morning sky, two colors met, one pale blue, one deep crimson, merging into gold. The world had begun again. It would forget, as it always did. It would rebuild and fall and rebuild once more. But somewhere, in every dawn, in every spark of hearthfire, in every breath of winter wind, the memory of the balance remained, waiting, eternal, patient as time itself. For even when all else fades, the flame and the frost endure.